Hey everyone, OX Nguyen here, and you're watching the RUNEBase podcast. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Lukas Goetz, the co-founder and CEO of Brokkr Finance. Brokkr Finance is working on some really exciting things that are going to make decentralized finance and the THORChain, all the THORChain ecosystem products more accessible and easier to use for mass adoption amongst the mainstream. In this conversation, we talk about their roadmap, a lot of the exciting things to come, how they're approaching THORChain synthetics, what their three key pillars are, and also what's coming down the road in terms of product, features, and the Bro token to follow. We had an amazing conversation. Just some matters of housekeeping. We have some more exciting interviews lined up here. Next week, we'll be talking with Emil, the founder and CEO of the XDeFi wallet project. And then we'll also be releasing our beginner's guide to THORChain along with some other fun content here to come. So if you're like what you see, you can subscribe at runebase.org. We are on YouTube now, and we'll also be live for those of you asking on iTunes and Stitcher and all the other podcast apps to come. So keep your eyes peeled for that as well. Thank you as always for watching, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Bye. Lukas, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
To start, it'd be great if you can give us a bit about your background. How, where'd you come from, and how'd you get into crypto?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. So my journey actually started in 2014 when I did my first investments in Bitcoin. I think it was the time around when Mt. Gox was hacked and price on one BTC got down from $1,100 down to $400, and I thought, yeah, that's the right moment to start investing into this new asset class.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it was nice in the first place, but 2 weeks after that, I checked the price again. It was down at 200, so I made 50% loss, and I thought, like, oh, that's gonna be tough. But I think I started with the right mindset to see, okay, crypto is not only going up and up, but also can go down.
Even that early, you had that conviction for a very, even then it was a nascent asset, and you still had the conviction to go in after a 50% drawdown.
Yeah, I thought let's try this. For me personally, when internet revolution really became big, I was just too young, or maybe also too dumb, to realize what's actually going on there and to make use of it as an entrepreneur. And once I realized the chance I missed, I said to myself, okay, this will never ever happen again. And next big thing I realized coming along, I will fully jump on it. And yeah, then there was Bitcoin, and then it was crypto and blockchain, and I know, okay, that's the new big thing, and let's do this.
Absolutely. And so you started investing in Bitcoin after the Mt. Gox hack, and then did you start getting involved building in crypto, soon after that, or at what point did you make the transition from trader investor into builder, developer, entrepreneur?
Yeah, so it was then more or less 2 years later when I really started deep diving into crypto and blockchain, around 2016, 2017, when I spent really, really much time to understand what's going on in the space, what's coming next, what's the future. And at the end of 2017, I decided together with 3 of my co-founders, okay, skip our existing jobs, which were we were basically IT consultants, and say, hey, let's try this, do our own thing, start a company. And this was the beginning of our blockchain company, Block42. So we started out with that. First of all, we really focused on investing into the crypto space. So we set up a fund-like vehicle. It was not officially a fund, but it's like the idea, the concept was pretty much the same. We were able to raise a couple of millions euro here in Austria, Central Europe, and started to invest in the crypto space. And pretty early also in projects like THORChain. And this was more or less the starting point for us to do a deep dive into this ecosystem.
Oh, nice. So you started as a fund, and a several $1 million fund, you said, and you started investing in projects, and pretty early on you found THORChain. Can you talk about how you first heard about THORChain, and what was your first impressions of it? Did it excite you? Did you see it, early on as something that had a lot of potential?
I mean, at that time, there are a lot of projects out there with great promises, and they told you, yeah, this is going to be the future. We do this and that, and this is going to be great. And it was not that easy to really distinguish between those who are just having nice looking white papers and those who are really be able to deliver. But down the road, we got more and more confident regarding THORChain because they actually delivered what they promised down the road. And so, like, I would say confidence level increased over time, of course. And yeah, like this was kind of the starting point for us. And also pretty early, we started not only investing into the space, but also built up our own dev team. So right now we are kind of two focus areas. The one is investing, the other one is our labs team, which is essentially building blockchain solutions. That's more or less the overall thing we do. We started out in doing work for different networks, different protocols, did a lot of work for Icon, the Icon network. We worked for Phantom, Chainlink, and also pretty early for THORChain. So we built, for example, the Telegram notification bot for node operators. So when your node is getting some troubles, when you get slash points or your node is not available anymore, you get notified via Telegram and can easily fix that. And so we also started from the dev side to understand how THORChain works and what it's all about.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear more. We'll dive into the work that you're doing with THORChain, specifically with Brokkr Finance here in a bit. But first, can you tell us a bit about the team that you're working with at Block 42 and Brokkr? Who are the people behind the team? Yeah,
so all together at Block 42, we are about 20 people right now. So started a little bit more than 3 years ago, and I'm glad that we're still here. It was not, of course, easy all the time. You have a lot of ups and downs, of course, with market moving up and down as well. So I'm pretty glad that we managed to build up the team, to build up knowledge in that space. More than 10 people are already working on Brokkr now. So, of course, most of the team are having software development background and on different areas related to blockchain. Of course, we build front-end stuff, which is kind of interacting with blockchain protocols. The same for backend applications, but also on the protocol level, on smart contract level, we did a lot of work, as I said before, for Icon on that side. So, started out in Austria, Central Europe, with a team of 4 people essentially, and now our team is spread around the world, having great people from various countries, and that's kind of the cool thing, that you just need a stable interconnection and some motivated people, and you can really do great stuff together, and that's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. And it sounds like a similar journey. When I connected with the THORChain team originally, we were running a services business, working on a little bit of development, but mostly community management, communications, and marketing for different projects in the ecosystem. This was 2016, 2017. And then in 2018, I connected with the team from THORChain at an Ethereum developer conference. And this was right before they started THORChain, like February 2018. And we developed a relationship with them. We worked alongside them on a few other projects. And then when they started THORChain at the end of 2018, we were on board as the early community and communications consultants or service providers. And that was our connection to THORChain. So it sounds like we were on similar paths there as you guys.
Awesome. And I mean, being in the space, I don't know, from 2017 to 2018 on is pretty early. I don't know, in a couple of years, we will look back and say, wow, these times were crazy. Seeing this ICO hype 2017, 2018, and being part of that and survive essentially is a great thing. And amazing times, I would say.
I think so too. And I think we'll even look back on now, even if you look like the THORChain ecosystem today and see how it's growing. We have you today. We have we spoke with the Thor starter team last week, and we have like the XDeFi team coming up and more coming through the pipeline. I think right now it's possible to reach out and talk to all of you, everybody that's building on the THORChain ecosystem, which is exciting. But if we extrapolate out, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I think the ecosystem is going to be big enough that it's going to be like the Ethereum ecosystem now, impossible to talk to and know everybody. But we'll do our best to keep up here.
Yeah, so I'm pretty glad that we are that early, also in the THORChain ecosystem, to have this chance to connect those people, to really be connected to brilliant minds out there and understanding their ideas, how they see the future coming, and get inspired by them. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think that's a great segue into giving us the opportunity to get inspired and excited about what you guys are working on. So Brokkr Finance is known for, among other things today, rolling out, I think a week or two ago, you rolled out like synthetic assets on testnet. Let's jump into that. Let's get a quick overview. First, what are THORChain synthetics? And then we'll talk about Brokkr's role in THORChain synthetics. What are the problems you're solving? What's the solution, et cetera? But let's start with that high level overview. So what are we looking at with THORChain synthetics?
Sure. So synthetic assets are assets which are solely living on the THORChain network. And why does anyone want to use them? Because in the first place, it enables the users to have much cheaper and much faster transactions and swaps between assets. So right now, if you want to swap between native Bitcoin and a native ETH, you need to go from the Bitcoin chain to THORChain, to the swap from Bitcoin to Rune, from Rune to ETH, and then sending out the ETH to the destination wallet, which is already great. This is a great innovation, which THORChain provides us, but it's still, you need to consider, you need to pay twice the transaction fees, like one time on the Bitcoin network and one time on the Ethereum network, and you need to pay for the slippage-based fees doing the swaps. So what synthetics are now enabling is building an asset which is solely living on the THORChain network, but still being fully backed by 50% Rune and 50% by the desired asset. So in the end, for the user, they still have the same value in their hand, but can interact with this asset much faster and cheaper. So if you now do a swap between a synthetic Bitcoin to a synthetic ETH, this only happens on the THORChain network, and you don't need to wait for transaction confirmation on Bitcoin network, on the Ethereum network, and you don't need to pay the transaction fees on those two networks, but just having this entity on the THORChain network. So once this is live, we will see great usage in terms of swaps, but actually this is just a starting point. With having the synthetic assets in hand, there will be much more possible, but don't want to go in detail yet. Let's talk about it later probably.
Sure. And so these synthetic assets, they're native to the THORChain ecosystem. As such, they minimize the amount of transaction fees you have to pay. They minimize the amount of slippage that happens. They minimize the amount of time it takes to execute this transaction. And then from there, that's the foundation that from which a lot more can happen. What is unique about, so synthetics are a primitive that are enabled at the THORChain layer, right? At the protocol layer.
Right.
And so what does Brokkr bring unique into that equation?
Yeah. So maybe I need to start from the beginning where the Brokkr idea initially was created.
Yes,
so
please, yeah.
As I said before, we did development for various networks. One of them was THORChain. We also invested in THORChain. So we are kind of deeply connected with this network. And once there was I think it was a dev update where the THORChain team stated, hey, they're looking for a team who is building the first interface for the THORChain synthetics. And we said, yeah, makes sense. Let's try this. Reached out to the team and talked about the concept and say, yeah, let's do this. So this was kind of the starting point. In the first place, it was more like, okay, we are we're building this interface like, okay, this is just a job, and then we are done again. But while we are working on the interface, on the synthetics, we realized this huge potential synthetics and later also the entire THORFi space will bring along. And so we started thinking about, okay, what can we actually do with it? Why not taking synthetics as the starting point, but then really reach out and really build a fully fledged product out of it? And that was the starting point for us. And then we decided, okay, using synthetics as the starting point, but the long-term goal is to build Brokkr to an investing platform for optimized DeFi investing. So that's the overall goal we are following. Why? Why did we see the demands? Why did we see that there should be such a fully fledged platform and not just a single interface for trading synths? I think there are so many great protocols out there, so many great DeFi applications. This is not what we are lacking right now. There's so much innovation happening in the space and really great ideas which are built. But on the other hand, we see kind of a gap between the DeFi space and let's say the mass market. So probably, I don't know how much THORChain users we see right now, but I don't think that is more than 50,000, 100,000. So it's still so little in quantity, and that's actually what needs to be changed, because THORChain and all other DeFi protocols will only be really successful if we manage to bring the masses into these application, these DeFi space. And this is right now much too hard for most of the people. It's, to be honest, to open up some THORChain interface and try to understand what liquidity pools are, what impermanent loss is, what an AMM is, and all this stuff. It's so hard to understand, and so there's really a lot of knowledge people need to have to really start making use of these protocols. Second thing is it's pretty time consuming. So if you want to stay up to date, if you really want to be on the top of it, you need to spend like 24/7, right? And the other thing is the entire space is pretty fragmented. So many different chains, so many different instruments out there. For a new user, it's kind of, they don't have any chance to really understand what's going on there.
Sure.
And that's what Brokkr tries to solve. That's what Brokkr is aiming for, to close this gap between those DeFi space, and in the first place, it's the THORFi, THORChain space, and the mass market. This is kind of the overall goal we are following.
Absolutely. And so Brokkr stands as a layer. Would it be fair to say that you're like taking all the ingredients of all the different investment strategies that exist in the THORChain ecosystem and maybe even more broadly, and then you're abstracting them away, and then more users who don't keep up to date with all the latest in liquidity providing strategies and, being careful of impermanent loss. And then now we have synthetics assets and everything that synthetic assets start to enable. And maybe with Brokkr, what would a fair analogy look like? Maybe in traditional finance, would this look like a robo-advisor, like a Wealthfront? Or would this look like in DeFi, like maybe Yearn Finance does have their vaults, and then they have on the background, they're auto executing different strategies set up by their experts. Can you give an analogy of what this looks like compared to something that the audience might be familiar with already?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some of them where it's a similar direction we are heading to. I think what we do completely different is that we don't put the network or the technical features in the first place, like many other applications do right now. For us, it's all about the user, and put the user in the center of everything what we do, and taking the user as the starting point. We stated we want to be and position Brokkr as the user's brother in decentralized finance. That's kind of the the picture we want to deliver to the user. And this brother in decentralized finance, like a good friend of yours, which is your brother, or your older brother, which is kind of supporting you, which is taking you by the hand and guiding you through this overwhelming DeFi space, and really be supportive, be there for you, and help you to make use of these great advantages the DeFi space offers to the people. And this concept, this approach is based on three main pillars. First one is automation. So we want to automate certain tasks for the user he don't want to take care of, or he isn't capable of taking care of. So I don't know, let's say, for example, via Brokkr, the user can make use of savings accounts, like get a stable yield, risk-free. And with Brokkr and with automation of Brokkr, we could dynamically change where these assets of the user are actually allocated to. So depending on changing of APYs, depending on new opportunities, Brokkr will be able to automate certain tasks for the user. So this is kind of the first very important one, optimize and automate actions for the user. The second one is recommending. So as your brother in decentralized finance, we want to give you advice, what you can do. We want to give you, want to notify you when something important happens. So take, for example, you took out some loan via lending and borrowing, and the collateral value drops heavily, and you have the risk to get liquidated. So because your collateral is too low in comparison to what you take out as a loan. Right now, it's pretty hard. You need to check all the time, how is my loan to value ratio? Do I get liquidated? Do I need to repay my loan, and so on? Why not using Brokkr, which just notifies you, hey, watch out, you're in the risk of getting liquidated. Why not pay back some loan? So really recommend options to the user so that he is not in the need to do all the stuff on his own and spend so much time in that space. And the third pillar we are building up on is education. So even when Brokkr is automating a lot of tasks for the user and is recommending the user, it's still, in our opinion, very important that people getting educated on what's going on in the DeFi space. And this is, I think it's challenging because it's combining two very difficult worlds. On the one hand, it's crypto blockchain you need to understand. On the other hand, it's the finance world. You need to understand how financial instruments work. And we want to educate users, not very deeply, but to a certain level that they are aware what's going on, and also be able to build up trust. Because right now, if users are used to get 0.0 something on their bank account, and then they open up a DeFi application where it's offered 20% plus fixed yield, they might think, hey, that must be a scam, that can't be true. But if we gave them some context and explained them why this is actually true, I think we can really build up trust in these protocols and in this space.
Yeah. So automation, recommendation, education. Your bigger brother in decentralized finance. I love it. And just that education component, is that going to come through? What will that look like? Do you envision having guides, videos, tutorials? Like, are you going to have an education portal, or will this look like education within an application interface, like little helpful nudges and maybe mini tutorials or wizards inside like an interface? How do you think about delivering education?
So we definitely would start within the application to give hints, to give advices, to explain what's going on. But also having some educational content, which is going into more detail on our own. But I don't think we need to go into full detail here, because there are so many great resources already out there, like the videos from Grassroots Crypto, what you are doing with, or you are starting with RUNEBase.org.
Yeah.
So a lot of great content is produced by the community, and I think for Brokkr we can definitely link to some of these resources and point the user to the right destination.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Grassroots Crypto, LP University, THORChain.org, THORChain.com. The community has done a great job. And RUNEBase, I feel aligned with what you're saying with Brokkr's vision. I think my thinking with RUNEBase.org was that there's so much great content out there about THORChain, but a lot of it is a bit more technical, and a bit harder to digest and understand even for me. I'm a relatively slow learner, if I'm being honest, and it takes me a lot of interactions and a lot of contact with or touch points with the content that's out there today to really understand things. But once I understand them, I'm able to explain them in a way that more people can understand. And so that was my goal with RUNEBase. And so we have some really exciting things coming over the next few weeks and months to bring THORChain to even more people through guides, videos, educational content, and interviews like this. So yeah, feel aligned with you. It'll be fun to see where we can collaborate in the weeks and months to come as you guys come out.
Definitely. And this already proves that there's so much educational content out there, proves that THORChain itself and the DeFi space itself is so hard to understand. Why do we even need those educational content? Because it's that hard to understand. And that's exactly what we see with Brokkr, that there is this gap, this knowledge gap we need to close for the user to really reach out to the masses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so that's exciting to come. And also exciting to come, before the call, you sent me over a little sneak peek of a white paper. So Brokkr Finance, we have to look forward to a few things on the roadmap. In particular, it looks like Brokkr. Well, first, do you want to give us an idea of what sort of products and features you have on the roadmap, and then we can talk a little bit about the white paper and the token that's to come. But yeah, do you want to start by giving us some context on what's to come in terms of features and product?
Sure. So the user-facing products will be in the first place on the, let's say, next 1.5 years, will be essentially four major things. User will have the possibility to perform trades or swaps. Users will have the possibility to access savings, which is essentially low risk, stable yield. We're going to add borrowing and lending, and we're going to add investing, like we call it investing, this section, where it's all about, of course, higher risk, but also higher yield. But that's going to be the kind of what the user sees. In the background, we're going to fully focus in the first place on the THORFi services. So starting now with synthetic assets as let's call it as the vehicle we use for using all the other THORFi services which come along. On the roadmap, there is THORFi lending borrowing, which will be integrated by Brokkr. On the roadmap, there are composites, which is a game changer again, because you suddenly be able to have price exposure to a set of different assets. And so you, again, have a set of very high risk and high yield and high performing assets, or you have a set of, more or less low risk, lower yield assets in one composite asset. And
can we define a composite asset for folks who might not know? Would it be fair to say like a composite asset could be, for example, a token that represents a number of other tokens, like the DeFi Pulse Index, and that represents, exposure across 15 different tokens or projects in the realm of DeFi. Would that be accurate?
I think that's a good picture. Yeah. Okay. I think that works. Yeah. And so you can you will have different combinations of these assets, and as I said, high risk, low risk, high yield, low yield. So this is definitely one thing we put in the investing section for the user. Okay. But again, users don't need to understand how this system in the background really works together. How liquidity pools are linked with synths, are linked with composites. So this is the entire stack. We just abstract away and provide a simple to use interface for the user. I think now with synthetics, this is the first one we're gonna put live. Next thing is interest-bearing synths. So this is what we call the savings, where the synths holder participate in the yield generation of the liquidity pools. So essentially, you let's say as a PTC holder, open up Brokkr Finance, put in your PTC in interest-bearing synth, which means you have in the background minted a synth and put it in the vault, and now you are earning a stable yield on your asset you put in there. And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, you redeem it again, you get back your BTC plus the interest you earned that time, which is great. Again,
yeah,
the user doesn't need to know that there is THORChain in the background, but just using this infrastructure to get yield on his BTC.
Are there going to be two different types? So say there's like synthetic Bitcoin. Will all synthetic Bitcoin be interest bearing in that when you redeem them, they'll unravel into the principal Bitcoin plus interest? Or will there be two different types of synthetic Bitcoin, like interest bearing and non-interest bearing? So
the asset itself is the same, but user can lock in the synth, which then means the synth is put into this vault and then participating on the yield generation. And the current design is like that there is a fixed rate the interest-bearing synths will get. So let's say, I don't know, 10% APR on your synth, and this is fixed. Like this is set by the protocol, this yield rate, and so you actually know I put my BTC in there and I get for sure this 10% APR.
Okay, and does that yield come from, and stop me if this gets too technical, but does that yield come from exposure to the liquidity pool and just collecting, exchange fees, trading fees, or block rewards, as you would almost as if you were an LP, or is that yield coming from, taking that asset and then there's a lending aspect to it and then you're collecting interest from the borrower? Where does the yield for interest-bearing synths come from?
So basically, it's based on the system income, which means all the fees which are generated by THORChain. This is the system income, and this is more or less paying down the interest for the synth holder. It works like this: that in the first place, the synth holder can redeem their yield from the reserve, from the protocol reserve, but then you have kind of a deficit on the protocol reserve because it was yield was paid out, and this deficit is then paid back by the system income over the time. So which means every time a new block is generated, the system income is calculated, and a certain amount of the system income is then dedicated to fill up this deficit in the protocol reserve.
Cool. And so it also sounds like this enables, unlike liquidity pools or liquidity provision, this enables single asset exposure to yield inside of THORChain, right? Like, in liquidity pools, you have to have exposure to both, the asset plus Rune. But with the synthetic, yield-bearing synthetics, I could, if I just want to have Bitcoin exposure plus yield on top of that, it sounds like it'll be single asset exposure.
Yeah, exactly. So on the DEX level, it's still, if you start with BTC, the system's still gonna convert your BTC in Rune, put the Rune in the liquidity pool, just the Rune, put just the Rune in the liquidity pool, and you have your synth BTC. But once you're gonna redeem your synth BTC, so kind of burn it and put it back, you get back your Rune, which is then automatically gets swapped to your BTC. It's like the BTC plus interest you get.
Before the asset, so if I put in Bitcoin, you're saying 100% of that is converted to Rune, and so it's not 50-50. It's not like half of it is converted.
No, so it's converted 100%. Then 100% Rune is put into the pool, but then it's backed by 50% Rune and 50% asset. And arbitrageur is gonna balance the pool again, and you have the same level of both assets in there.
Got it. So in a way, when someone mints a Bitcoin, synthetic Bitcoin, it does put some buy pressure on Rune. I mean, Rune appreciates for the creation of a synthetic asset.
Yeah. So it drives demand for Rune essentially. And that's actually a pretty nice design that everything is built around this single token and is used all the time.
Value accrual. Yeah, Rune seems to have been designed from the beginning with really great, best in class value accrual. And then it sounds like they just keep layering on new layers of value accrual to Rune, which I'm not upset about. I think I'm quite happy about. So very cool. Now, what other question did I have about that? So you're minting synthetic Bitcoin, 100% is traded to Rune. The synthetic Bitcoin itself eventually gets exposure to the liquidity pool, which is 50-50 Rune and Bitcoin. What is a timeline for right now? Synthetics are in testnet, and people can, and we'll have instructions below. You guys have some great resources on how users can test synthetic assets on THORChain testnet at Brokkr Finance. And so we'll have those in the show notes below this. But what would you say the timeline is for synthetic assets to go live and then interest-bearing synthetics to go live after? I'd love to hear what we have to look forward to for that.
Yeah, so I guess in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, we will see the transition to the mainnet for the synthetics in the first place. Of course, cool. that depends on the core team because they are essentially are activating it. And after that, I guess probably a month or 1.5 months later, we will see interest-bearing synths. So I think the basic concepts are already there. It just needs to now the testing, which is very important to see if the system really works as expected, and also in combination with the caps now on the liquidity pools. Of course, if you can't put in more Rune because you are capped, this also means you can't mint another synth. So these are tightly connected to each other. But I guess this is just now an issue, when we call it like this, an issue for the on-ramp phase. But once caps are released and interest-bearing synths and synths are on the mainnet, then it really starts to take off.
Absolutely. And can you give us an idea? I don't know if it's premature, but what sort of yield or like APYs might we look forward to for something like a synthetic Bitcoin interest bearing? Do we think it'll be single digit, double digit? Any idea?
Pretty hard. So it's definitely based on what the system altogether is able to generate as yield, and I think right now in the docs it's about 30%. An example in there, 30% overall, and from that you take overall 10% for a stable yield rate. So, but essentially this is going to be set by the protocol. There is a variable yield rate, and this is then the kind of the baseline, how much yield will be available for synths. And this can be in the long run. This probably going to be changed, and depending on the market conditions. But this is kind of the attribute you set to set the right rate.
Awesome. So we have synthetic assets, we have composites, we have interest-bearing synthetics, we have broadly the 3 pillars of automation, recommendation, and education coming. And to date, all of this has been circling around the THORChain ecosystem. But as I understand it, THORChain is just the beginning in terms of ecosystems that Brokkr has the potential to integrate with. What else do you have in that department to come?
Yeah. So as I said, the focus for now is fully on THORChain and THORFi services. But once we see, we managed this very well and get some traction on Brokkr, we are planning to start integrating further networks. On the roadmap, there is now the Terra network with like Miro and Anchor would be really nice enhancement to Brokkr. And again, this would just be integrated one of these 4 financial instruments I just mentioned before of trading, saving, borrowing, lending, and investing. So the user doesn't really see that obviously that we're going to adding more and more financial instruments and protocols in the background. It's just that the user's yield is getting better, the user's options are getting better, what he can do with Brokkr. So Miro and Anchor would be definitely great. Like for example, with Anchor, another protocol which provides you low risk, stable yield. So Brokkr could automate this for the user. Like again, user comes with one BTC, and depending on the APY and depending on how these protocols performed in the past, we can then set 50% in interest-bearing synths, 50% in Anchor. Like these concepts are then enabled and can be maybe just recommended by Brokkr or also fully automated by Brokkr. Yeah. And for us, even if we add more and more protocols, THORChain stays our core element, our core building block for all of this. Because once a user wants to use some protocol where he needs a certain token to access it and has just a starting token, of course, we're going to use the liquidity pools to swap to this desired token that the user is able to use Anchor with Luna, for example. So I expect the more protocols we add, the broader Brokkr becomes, even more volume will be brought to the THORChain liquidity pools, which is then a great fit.
Yeah, it sounds like, you mentioned even as Brokkr integrates with new ecosystems, the user interface doesn't change too much. The user, it might maybe, the analogy that comes to mind is, a customer in a restaurant, they don't see that on the back end, the restaurant is talking to new sources, new suppliers, new farmers, for their ingredients. When they walk in, they sit down at the table, the menu, they just see the menu. And they don't have to know that, it's coming from 12 different farms and 5 different suppliers and, on and on. And so I like that abstraction, because it is like, even for someone whose job it is to work in the space and keep up with everything, it's just too much, so we're just, we're always trying to find ways to support that onboarding for other people so they don't have to keep up with it.
Definitely. I really like this analogy because, the visitor in the restaurant doesn't care about the supplier and doesn't care about the ingredients that much. He only cares about good food and quality food. And that's the same for Brokkr. Our main user group won't care about THORChain, Terra, and all these other protocols that much, but they really care about having a great service in the end.
Yeah, great service, great product, user experience. There was a question posed, I forget if it was like the Thor Bull or Meow Brains, one of our friends on Twitter asked, like, what does the killer application for Twitter or for THORChain look like? And for me, the answer was, a mobile, like 100% newbie friendly mobile interface with quick execution times and low transaction fees, low transaction costs, and a fiat on and off ramp. And so it occurs to me, are those things, do we have like a mobile interface to look forward to with Brokkr, fiat on and off ramps? Are those things that we might see in our future?
Yeah, seems like he talked about our roadmap. So we are going mobile, definitely. So we started out with desktop version to just have a quick launch. But we see this importance of being available on mobile. That's for sure. Even for this target group we are aiming for. And the same is for fiat on-ramp. So once we have a certain feature set implemented, we are planning to have some fiat on-ramp services in there, because this is, again, a big gap between the mass market and the user and the DeFi space to have in the first place some crypto at your hand. And if you need to go through different pages, different wallets and stuff like this, it's kind of hard and most of the users won't do it. So an easy on-ramp to the entire space, and then an easy interface to make use of these services. I think that's the killer application.
I see it. I love that vision, and we'll look forward to seeing that come to fruition over the coming weeks, months, and years. Last but not least here, we have a token to look forward to. And this is something that I don't think it's a complete surprise to the community here. It's been, kind of whispered about on Twitter here. But can you tell us a bit about what's to come with and I love this, the Bro token. What do we have to look forward to there?
Yeah, so we're planning to launch the Pro token beginning of next year. So once already some features are live and we see there's traction, the token itself will allow user to save some transaction fees with the making use of the Pro token. The token will also allow people to participate in governance. So we need to figure this out in detail how this really looks like, but that's definitely one major feature that people be able to participate in governance decision, because all income Brokkr generates is channeled to a DAO, which most probably will live on the Ethereum ecosystem. And this DAO is then kind of managing all the funds. So, and the governance token holders are essentially deciding what's going to happen with the funds. There is now a sale planned for the token. So we're right now in preparation of the seed round. I think most probably one very, very powerful and supportive lead investor found. More infos will be shared in the next couple of weeks. So having now the seed round planned, followed by a private round, and as I said, at the end of this year, starting next year, doing the public sale. We are going to do that most probably with Thor. What else? These guys are great and are really supportive as well in preparation for the token launch. So this definitely makes sense for us to do the IDO via Thor. And I think that's kind of covers what the Pro token is all about. Awesome.
Well, one thing I want to get last but not least here, we touched on it earlier, but I'm going to circle back to this. What excites you about THORChain? When we tie it back into how you and I connect to this ecosystem that we're in more broadly. But when you think about THORChain, what excites you about its future? What makes it special?
So first and foremost, I'm not excited about the features. I'm really excited about the team and about the ecosystem, because these guys are started out with big promises a couple of years ago, and now we see they deliver. And this makes me pretty confident that they continue to deliver in that manner. So, an idea is probably 1%, 99% is execution, and these guys are really capable of executing. So this is really number one. And secondly, what I really like is how the design of the system is in terms of clearly defined roles, clearly defined stakeholders, and also being very transparent what incentives these stakeholders have. And through these incentives, you can kind of trigger certain behavior. And what I mean is you have those liquidity providers, you have those traders, you have these arbitrageurs, and these roles were right from the beginning on really clearly described and incentivized. And through setting the right incentives, you're able to get the desired behavior. And this is a great concept. I think we just see the very beginning, but similar concepts will evolve in the entire blockchain space to really incentivize certain behavior and get to the desired result without any chances to fake the system. And this is what excites me a lot about THORChain, but in the bigger picture also about DLT and crypto.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's fascinating. There's so much to be interested about crypto more broadly, but even THORChain You can be excited about the team, the transparency, the brilliance with which they've designed the economic model, and the rules and the game theory incentives and everything. And so, yeah, it's great to hear that. Lukas, I guess now, last but not least, where can people go to learn more about you or the work that you're doing with Brokkr Finance?
Yeah, so we are live, no, not really live. We're on testnet on Brokkr.finance. So would be cool if people just open up the alpha version, test it out, give feedback, because that's important for us to understand if people understand what we're actually building and get the idea. And also follow us on our socials like Twitter, Brokkr Finance, as well as a Telegram channel where you could ask questions, give feedback, interact with us. As I said, that's in the current stage, and probably also in the long run, this is the most important one, to stay connected to our users, to understand what they need, what they want, and to build a product for them. It's not a product for us, for the team. And because we like to say we're Brokkr Finance, it's a product we build for the users. And so we need to be in constant interaction with them. And yeah, that's my invitation. Join us on the socials, engage with us, and we're happy to talk about Brokkr and its future.
Absolutely. That's Brokkr, BROKKR, which actually, I love the name. Let's give a quick, I only learned this recently through some of the documentation you sent me, but I assumed, as I'm sure a lot do, that broker, was in reference to, a financial broker or like a broker of products or, financial services, which it might be an homage to, but where does the name broker actually really originate from?
Yeah, so we said, we're starting out in the THORChain ecosystem. We need to follow this Norse mythology approach. And so Brokkr was actually a smith who, for example, forged Thor's hammer, and together with his brother. And we thought, wow, that's great. This, as I said, it's somehow similar to a broker in the financial industry. What we are somehow as well. It's a figure out of the Norse mythology with the smith Brokkr, and it's the bro in there, this brother in decentralized finance. Like this was like, okay, from
it's too good. It's too good, yeah.
And yeah, it seems like a fit for us.
That's awesome. That's maybe the most unexpected side effect of getting involved in the THORChain ecosystem is learning about Norse mythology through through all of these names and like Asgard and Valhalla, and before Thor belt was called Thor belt, it was called something else, and it's like it was the Norse name for his belt, it's just fun to learn all these aspects of 9 realms, Awesome. Well, Lukas, this has been fascinating. I'm super excited to see these products rolling out. I think user interfaces getting more and more simple for more people, automating, abstracting, automating, recommending, and increasing the amount of education that's out there is everything that we need to take these products into the mainstream. And so it's going to be great to follow along as you guys do just that. So thank you so much for joining and for sharing with us. And we look forward to following along with you the weeks, months, and years to come. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye.
All right, buddy. Bye.